Hi there, my name's Draken. This is the first of a couple of video tutorials. People have been asking me about how you build Cyberlox or Cyber Dreadfalls. So what I've done is I'm going to put a couple of tutorials up to show people how it's done. First of all, there is no right or wrong way in which to make Cyberlox. There's only ways that work and ways that don't. I will show you a couple of methods that I use, but I'm sure you'll find on the internet a couple of other ideas as well, and different people have different ideas how it gets done. As long as it looks good at the end of the day, then it works. But I'll go through the way I do it, and if you want to have a look at other ideas as well, that's perfectly fine. So in this first one today, what I'm going to do is just discuss the materials that you might want to use in there. You don't have to use all of these materials. These are a number of materials that I use. You could use some of these, you could use other materials, but these are the ones that I use at the moment, so I'll just quickly go through all of those. First of all, you have your Cyberlox, or otherwise known as Crin. And Crin is this plastic tube-like substance you see I've got in these bags here. You get it in a number of different thicknesses and different sizes. So you've got some really thin Crin there in the bag there. You've got some medium-sized Crin and thicker Crin as well. You'll find it also comes in a number of different colours. So you can get it purely in a pure blue, for example, pure black, in fact any colour you sort of think of. You can also get it patterned, so like for example this one here, I don't know how clearly you can see that on the camera, but that's striped, so that's got a turquoise and a black stripe going through it. You'll find it comes in a number of different sort of colours. Crin is a type of plastic tubing that a lot of people like to use it in their Cyberlox, mainly because it's nice and lightweight, but it adds a lot of volume as well to your Cyberfalls. And it's quite typical that you'll see a lot of people who've got Cyber Dreadfalls use Crin in it. Getting hold of Crin, on the other hand, a little bit more difficult. You won't find many shops on the high street that sell it, but you can get it online from places like the Cyberlox shop, which you can find if you do a Google search for it. This Crin is very, very stretchy. The disadvantage of Crin is it does fray very, very easily, so you've got to be a little bit careful with the way you use it. It does also kind of act like a Chinese finger trap, though I wouldn't recommend you do that with your Crin that you use in your Dreadfalls, because if you keep doing that, it will ruin them. So if you're ever going to use it as a Chinese finger trap, use one of your offcuts. But that's Crin there, so that's one of the substances we use. One of the other types of substance that sometimes gets used is wool, like this. You add this in, basically you use a method called felting, which sounds very dodgy, but what it actually means is it's a method for turning them into basically thick wool dreads. You find sometimes a lot of people do this just on its own. Again, it creates a nice thick soft dread that you can put into your hair. Some people mix it in with the Crin, some people just use this on its own, and again, perfectly fine. I'll very briefly in one of the other tutorials explain how you turn a bag of wool like this, which again comes in a number of different colours, into a woolen dread. A new material I've started working with recently is this. It's called Rexlace. Again, you can get this online. Basically it's like a plastic strip. It's almost like the sort of stripping you get with wire, except for it doesn't actually have the metal wire bit in the middle, and it just tends to be flat. It can be used in one of two ways. One is that you could tie it directly in, so you have strands of it running through your Dreadfalls. It also can be used for tying things into your Dreadfalls, so it's quite handy to have around, and it's not expensive to get a nice big reel of the stuff. And again, it comes in a number of different choices and options available for it. What else you have is you've got wool here. This is normal wool yarn. I do this to create braided dreads, something I'll show you later on as well. Again, they make a nice little addition to it. Again, you can get wool from pretty much most high street shops that deal in textiles, and you get it in a number of colours, number of different thicknesses. Personally, I prefer the thicker wool to the thinner wool when doing these sort of things. It just tends to seem to create a slightly more voluminous braid at the end of the day. Another material we use is this stuff. It's foam. You can pick these up from a lot of art shops on the high street at the moment. You get it in a number of different colours and in a number of different sizes as well. These are A4 sheets, but you can get them in A3 as well, which is a bigger size. You wouldn't normally put them straight into your hair like this, but instead what it would do is you'd use it to create thin strips that then come down from your hair, and sometimes you'll hole punch them as well, so they look like sort of belts hanging off your hair and everything else. And again, the nice thing with these, they're nice and buoyant in your hair, so they add a little bit more volume when they're put in. Now, when it comes to actually attaching it into the hair, so that gives you the basic ideas, the principles, the sort of materials you might use. There are a couple of others that you might want to use, but that's the ones I'll be covering. But when it comes to attaching it into the hair, what I use is just elasticated hairbands. Now, it's not the only method you can do it with. I know some people do it with hair clips, others do, they have wig caps to put them in. So there's a few options in which you can do it with, but elasticated hairbands is the method that I'll be showing today, and how to attach it to an elasticated hairband. A lot of the principles, though, could be put across to other methods of putting it into your hair. And I'll show later on in one of my final tutorials how you then attach that also directly into your hair. Finally, we're going to come to tools, and the number of tools that you're going to need to actually turn all this into your Cyberlox falls. You're going to need some sort of measuring tape or measuring ruler. I've got a plastic one here which has got inch markers put out on it. Quite straightforward. You could use a metal ruler, is probably actually preferable because it won't blunt or get chipped at all when you're using it to cut lines in things like the foam. But I use a plastic one mainly because I'm cheapskate. That there is pencil, obviously. That's going to be useful for marking out on your phone. So that's that bit. Pair of scissors, always very, very handy. You use this for a lot of the cutting of things like the Crin and so forth. Just make sure you've got a sharp pair. You can use it also for the cutting of the foam, but I tend to find having a sharp craft knife gives you much straighter lines when you're doing the cutting of that. Just make sure you remember to cut away from your body when you're using a craft knife, and to be doing it on a cutting board. Needle and thread, goes without saying. Just needle, and normally black thread is more than fine for most attachments that you need to do. It's used in one or two things to attach your Dreadfalls into your elastic band there, which will then be put into your hair later on. And a hole punch. Now this is a single hole punch, so it'll only create one hole at a time. Very handy, I find, to use a singular one rather than the double ones that you use for doing paper, but you can use the normal 2 hole punches that you get for normally using the side of paper to put into files and stuff. The only thing I find with those types is sometimes the gap from which you've got to squeeze the foam under. If you're cutting holes in the foam, you have to squeeze the foam a bit to be able to sneak it under. So the singular hole punch tends to be a little bit better. But say, if you can't get hold of one of those, don't worry, a double hole punch does just as well. And then finally, of course, you've got to have a stereo so you can listen to some music while you're doing it, and a number of your CDs of your favourites, industrial and cyber and EBM bands to be listening to inspire you to continue to build your dreads. So that's it for the first tutorial, but we will go back at a later point, and I will produce some more tutorials that will show you, first of all, how to put the Crin onto the band, and then into things like turning those into woolen Dreadfalls, how to braid these, and then once you do that, also how to put these into your hair as well. I am missing actually one material from here that I use in some of mine that you might have seen, and that's some ribbon. That goes without saying. It's quite an easy substance again to pick up, and normally it's in the same place you can pick your wool up and your thread from, and that goes quite well in your hair. But thank you for watching, and I will do a second one soon. Thank you.